Hey, I'm John Holmes, the owner of Holmes Hobbies, and we're going to do a professional review of the TRX crawler from Traxxas. It's a scale Defender, Range Rover Defender. Now you may ask yourself, why is this a professional review? And my answer would be, I've been providing crawler electronics for 12 years now, 10 years as my only source of income. So I'm pretty professional in the industry as far as that side goes. But I've also been crawling and building crawlers since 2002. There was about a 5-year period to where we had to build our own crawlers and there was nothing on the market to buy. And so my knowledge is pretty much from the beginning of the crawler industry all the way to this point. And this is a pretty big deal in the industry, honestly. Having Traxxas get into it, for one, and for two, having such a very refined vehicle with so many features and a very scale look on top of that, it's really a change in the market. It kind of signals that we're starting to mature and really getting the big players interested at this point. So it is pretty dang cool to see something like this. At any rate, let's get to it on the review of the Traxxas TRX-4. Now, first off, I would say that what is most important about the TRX-4 is the level of fun of driving, as any vehicle. If it's not fun to drive, then, well, there's no point in having it, right? And this vehicle is indeed really fun to drive. So it has a 2-speed gearbox, it has locking differentials, it has cruise control features on top of being what it is, which is a scale crawler. And I'll tell you, for the weight of this rig, it's pretty dang heavy, but it hooks up. It has a lot of capabilities because of the portals on the axles, a lot of ground clearance. The chassis, the bottom of the chassis, the skid plate is just real nice and tucked up because of that portal. And so generally, it's really fun to drive. It's actually more capable than I expected. So on a fun level for a crawler, if I was going to rate it on a 1 to 10, I would say it's about as close to a 10 as any ready to run could possibly be. Now, the downsides about having all of these extra features like the unlockable diffs, the 2-speed transmission, there's going to be stuff more likely to break. It's just more complicated. And so, you know, for now, even though I've already broken a servo, I still rate it high on the fun scale. Now, let's start with the drivetrain. So the difference about this crawler, the Traxxas TRX-4, is that it has portal axles, which gives it more ground clearance on the axles. And it comes stock with a 2-speed transmission and the unlockable diffs. All of those features, well, I suppose the portals come on the MST, something another crawler, I don't have one. However, the execution of these portals is pretty dang good. They're just nice and rigid, they have a lot of gear down, and generally, so far, they're holding up very well. And also from the taking apart video, that if you're a subscriber to Harley Designs, he took it apart and checked it out, and the gear width on the portals is nice and wide, so there's really not going to be much worry about breaking them with the stock electronics. The 2-speed transmission has very little slop in it. That's one problem. I typically don't like 2-speed transmissions, and the reason for that is because they have a lot of slop, and of course there's more parts that can break. So because of the large gear ratio in first gear, this rig actually doesn't have much slop, and I'll just kind of show you here the back and forth rolling in first gear. It really can't even perceive it in the rocks, honestly. Now if we go to second gear, that's about how much slop it has back and forth in second gear. Go back to first gear, it's pretty much locked in. It's as good as almost any transmission setup could be for slop. But a lot of the reason for that is that the really low reduction 65 to 1 that is located, majority of it in the axles themselves, it hides any transmission slop that may be there. So that it's really cool. And the super wide ratio of the transmission has actually changed my mind about 2 speeds, to tell you the truth. So it's a 25 to 1 ratio in first gear, and a 65-to-1 ratio in second gear. Or I'm sorry, other way around. 65-to-1 ratio in first gear and 25-to-1 ratio in second gear. And that makes for just super controlled crawling, as you're seeing right now in first gear. But then when you want to get up and go, 25-to-1 is really fast in a crawler. It's pretty much rock racer speeds. And so that's kind of changed my mind on 2 speeds. Now, would I put a 2-speed into a competition rig? Probably not. The complexity just doesn't lend itself to being as reliable. So, although the fun level of the 2-speed is great, it has its places. And for a vehicle that I'm just out and about having fun in my backyard, I've changed my mind. 2 speeds are pretty fun until they break. We'll see how it holds up to brushless power. But with a stock setup, with brush motor on there, it's a pretty dang good match. So overall, pretty impressed with the drivetrain, honestly. Gotta be real with you here. The unlockable diffs, they're also pretty fun. When you get into second speed and you're blasting around, it's really nice to be able to unlock the diffs and not have to worry about traction roll so much, honestly. Let's give a little taste of that out in the yard. There we go. So lock diffs, you can see that it self-righted itself. We're gonna unlock the diffs. We're gonna get into second speed. And really just, you can pretty much use it like a basher. Don't have to worry about it traction rolling too much. You can see, just kind of wag it back and forth. Oh, turned over. Let's lock those diffs, pop her into first gear, and maybe I can right myself. Yeah, let's unlock those diffs and back to bashing. For fun, for having fun in the backyard, man, this thing is, it's got me, I'm telling you. So back to first gear for crawling. All right, so next up on the list is electronics. Stock electronics on this are pretty decent, honestly. The radio is solid. There's a lot of features in the radio, a lot of programming in the radio. The ESC is just as smooth as it really needs to be, honestly. It's got a pretty good thermal mass as well, so it can handle blazing around in second gear and not having too much worry about ruining it. Now the servo, it's about 250 ounce-inches, and it's really not enough power to whip the wheels around with authority. And I had kind of forgotten that when you set a rig into a position, let's say I sat this rig here with the wheels turned and then I let off the transmitter, it doesn't quite center all the way. Well, on a regular servo, it's trying to center the entire time. The amps cause heat, the heat causes more amps, and then you get into a thermal runaway situation, which destroys the servo. So I actually sat the rig in a position with the wheels turned for a photo shoot yesterday, sat it there for about 15 minutes, and when I came back to pick it up, it had burned out the servo. Totally my fault. I had just forgotten that normal servos do that. Higher end servos these days have amp limiting, and so you really don't have to worry about that as much. It is pretty much the reason for amp limiting is to prevent servo burnouts. I think some of the upper end high-techs have it, Futavas have it. Also my Trailmaster servos, I ended up installing a BLS, a SHV 500 servo. So it's a 12-volt servo, which is running directly off of the 3-cell LiPo. As a matter of fact, there's a plug, a JST plug that is already on the ESC. And so I just literally plugged the servo right in to that JST harness and went about my business. It's kind of nice. A plug and play of an aftermarket servo that has its own JST plug. It just kind of happenstance that we were able to do that. But yeah, so at any rate, the upgrade that we have right now is just the SHV 500 12-volt servo. My fault again for letting the rig sit in one spot with the stock servo just bound up and trying to get out, but not being able to, so it's going to overheat. That'd be my biggest recommendation, is be careful when you're in the rocks that you don't get it wedged in and then just let it sit, because that will ruin a normal servo. So watch out for that. Resuming the video after some technical difficulties, we were talking about the electronics. So this rig comes with a Titan 21 turn 550 motor as stock. It's about the speed of a 27 turn motor in a 540 size. So that's just about right for a rig that you want to be able to go fast in but still have a decent amount of torque for crawling. Matter of fact, 27 turns are about the golden zone for producing power, torque, wheel speed, etc. Now, it's a good thing that they included a 550 and also made the rig workable with 550 motors, because with the speed and also the heft of this rig, a 540 motor is just going to simply burn out real fast. And we've seen this in the market before with the Axial Wraith and the Bomber, where a 540 just doesn't handle the gear down at all, really. You know, they can burn up in a matter of the first run if you're not careful with how you use them. And while we're talking about the electronics and, you know, the torque that a 550 will produce, let's show you a little back and forth action and illustrate the lack of torque twist here. So, wow, it didn't pick up a front tire. Get in the grass here and we can really see it. It just lifts straight up. There's practically no torque twist. Practically no torque twist at all, which is pretty dang cool. Now, that is in a large part due to the gear down that's in the axles. And since our drive shafts, our transfer shafts from the transmission, are turning basically twice the speed as a normal rig would twist, you have half of the torque twist on the axles. And so the portals having gear down in them, I think 2.5 to 1 reduction on the portals themselves, really gives this truck a suspension advantage over pretty much everything else in the market right now, to tell you the truth. The radio, also, while we're talking about electronics, the radio is the TQ, the Traxxas TQI, I think it's called. And it has available, at least, it doesn't come with it, but it has available their Bluetooth link. And this allows you to link up with your phone and adjust pretty much everything on the rig. Kind of like a Castle Link sort of deal, but on a phone. So you can adjust throttle curves. I don't have one myself and I've never used it, but I looked online to see this. I didn't realize it, but man, it's for a ready to run radio, it's really nice. It's got a lot of adjustability, and the fact that it's, you know, 8 channels or however many channels it is just kind of hammers this deal home as being something that I got to talk over here with somebody's got a fire, I guess. All right, we'll wait. All right. There we go, back to normal levels here. At any rate, the radio has been quite surprising as far as the features that it has. I haven't gotten into the adjustment yet, but to tell you the truth, between the ESC and the radio and the first gear reduction of 65 to 1, there is no lack of low speed control. Now, right now I have it in trail mode, so our drag brake isn't super strong. We have double tap reverse, but it's still plenty smooth. Plenty smooth. And we can get rid of the double tap reverse if we go into rock crawler mode. And I'll probably do that one day, but you know, I'm kind of used to the double tap reverse. It's not that big of a deal. Let's see. We've talked about all the electronics pretty much. Lack of torque twist. I'd just like to say that the engineers at Traxxas have done a really good job on this rig. I was kind of concerned at first hearing that they were coming out with a crawler, and then I learned that John Wood was the main engineer on this project. And John Wood and I have been competitively crawling for a long time. I haven't done it for quite a few years now. I'm not sure if John Wood is still competing, but nevertheless, he's been to many events, and he pretty much started in the industry the same time that I did, as far as going out to events, building your own crawlers, you know, a do-it-yourself kind of guy. And so it put me at ease knowing that he was heading up the engineering on this rig, because I know that he knows what a real crawler needs to do. You know, since he's been on the competitive side, he just wouldn't let a scale rig slip by without also being a performance rig. mean, you know, what I'm crawling through right now is pretty impressive for a scale truck, honestly. So, you know, it put me at ease, and then actually getting the vehicle in hands and testing it out, yeah, he did a really good job, and along with the other engineers that were working on the project. Everything from the drivetrain to the suspension, the tuning of the tires to the body weight, just everything was really done well as a whole package. And knowing Traxxas and their track record with plastic gears in the transmission, I really don't have any concerns with the gears being plastic in the transmission because they're extremely wide. The resins, the plastics that Traxxas is known to use in their vehicles are extremely high quality as well. The only problem that I've had so far is burning out the servo. Otherwise, I'm really not treating this rig nicely. Now, right now, I'm crawling a little bit more slow and controlled just because, why not? Having some fun. But at any rate, just want to tip my hat to John Wood and the other engineers at Traxxas on this one. They've done a great job as their first entry into the market. I've seen plenty of other first entries from other companies that didn't really do that great. And even if we look back to Axial's first release, the AX10, compared to today's rigs, it's really, you know, it's not so impressive. It didn't have very good geometry. You know, the axles themselves and the transmission was essentially the only thing that people ended up using for building rigs. Whereas, you know, of course, in a market that is more or less established, it's a lot easier to engineer something because you have a standard to go by. So I would expect new market choices to be, you know, more refined than what we had 10 years ago as a new entry into the market. At any rate, you know, my final say on this guy is that it's a pretty amazing rig all around. While I wouldn't want to put the transmission and the lockable diffs into a competition rig just because there's more to break with more complexity. As far as a fun rig that we're just going out and playing with in the backyard, this guy it's got me pretty convinced. The unlockable diffs are really fun. The two-speed transmission has a very wide ratio that it's changed my mind on two speeds being useful. Now we can always put a faster brushless motor in there and, you know, still get plenty of speed range from a single speed. But as far as a brushed motor, full package, ready to run rig, Traxxas has hit a pretty solid home run. I'd say full bases loaded home run with this guy. So if you're looking to get into the market, I would not hesitate to suggest this even on a first run. There may be some issues that, you know, we see worked out in the future, but, you know, from my experience in the market, the fact that I have about 30 other rigs right now, and me being able to just pick this guy up and go have fun with it and really enjoy the extra ground clearance, really enjoy the two-speed gearbox, the unlockable diffs, the ability to just bash around with essentially a crawler, a very capable crawler that can just bash around like any old basher would be. Hey, that's pretty cool in my mind. Let's see if we can self-right. Oh, maybe not today. Maybe not this time. Not this time. Well, we'll call that good on the video. I thank everyone for tuning in and hope you go out and have some fun.